Okay, hey everyone, this is Allison. I am founder of Earth and Ojas, an Ayurveda inspired health and wellness company here in St. Petersburg, Florida. I am also a fitness specialist with the National Center for Weight and Wellness in DC. And today I wanted to do a video. This is my very first, so be a little patient with me. But I wanted to do a video to show you my favorite restorative yoga pose. It's my go-to pose during times of stress. So all you need for this pose is a chair, a comfy chair, and then a pillow for your head and maybe a blanket. So I'm going to walk us through getting into the pose, being in the pose, transitioning out, and also provide a little context for why this particular pose might be useful right now. If you hear some snoring in the background, I'm sorry. I've got my assistant Sammy over here, who's knocked out. I think it's the yoga music, maybe my yoga voice, which he's not used to hearing. So anyway, so context for the pose. Of course, we are in the middle of a health crisis, a global health crisis, a pandemic, something many of us have never experienced before. There's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, because of the very much needed and necessary and hopefully effective social distancing practices and policies. A lot of us are feeling isolated. And so we are naturally all in a heightened state of stress. You know, we're worried about our health and well-being. We're worried about our loved ones, our family, friends, communities, healthcare workers. We're worried about our finances, our jobs. Just so much disruption to our usual way of living. And so, yeah, stress levels are super high. So if you've been freaking out, no worries, totally normal. You're human, right? And think about this too. This is like massive stress coming on top of, you know, a high state of stress that most of us are already running in, right? That's like how we kind of like live our lives in this high state of stress. And now we've got this whole other layer of stress added on top. So, with all that in mind, you know, when we are in this state of stress, our nervous system, particularly the sympathetic nervous system, gets overly activated. And it's already overly activated again because we're usually always running in stress mode anyway. So when we are overly stressed and this stress response kicks in, we usually go to one of three modes: fight, flight, or freeze. So fight, you know, you might find yourself feeling more tense, a little more argumentative, you know, judgmental, frustrated, either with yourself or with loved ones. Sadly, right now, we're seeing a rise in, for example, domestic violence. That's a result of stress and this sort of fight response. Now, there's also the flight response, which is just running away from the problem, the situation, whatever it is that's causing you stress. For me, that's usually my go-to mode, and I might literally go for a run or try to escape in some other way, maybe with a glass of wine, just being honest. And then third state is freeze, right? And I also do this one too. You just want to hunker down, hibernate, you know, crawl under the covers and try to forget about the world. And so fight, flight, or freeze. That's usually one of three modes. And you know, as long as you're not hurting anyone, being harmful to yourself or to someone else, honestly, like, again, we're wired to respond that way. That's how we evolved. That's how we survived. But being in that heightened state and being in that one of those three modes over a long period of time is just not healthy for us, and it actually wears down our immune system. It wears down our bodies, and then could also lead to other issues like anxiety, depression. So there's a lot of physical, mental health issues wrapped up in that heightened state of stress. So there's a brighter side, right? The good news is we have another part of our nervous system, tends to be a little weaker, but it's there, and that's the relaxation response, also known as the parasympathetic nervous system. And there are things we can do to boost, to strengthen the relaxation response. For some of us, that might be, like I have a client who's been doing a lot of knitting lately, which I was like, that's so awesome. Some people might be going for a walk in nature, right? Others, like nature's super helpful with the relaxation response. It could be, sitting, laughing, talking with a loved one, right? It could also be meditation. I know for me though, during these times when I'm especially anxious or worried or stressed out, sitting still in meditation can be really hard. It's just, there's too much going on, not just in my mind, but in my body. There's so many sensations, like I'm literally like feeling wired, that it can be uncomfortable to sit in stillness. So my go-to, one of my go-tos for my relaxation response, to strengthen it, is this pose, legs on the chair. Some of you might know it as legs up the wall. That's another variation. I like this version on the chair. I find it more relaxing because it takes the hamstrings out of the picture and just really allows my body to feel rested and supported at the same time. So I've shared this pose with pretty much, all my clients, friends, family members, random people on the street who look like really stressed out to me. Just kidding. Maybe I've done that once. No, I really haven't. Anyway, so the pose. Let's do it. Chair. This is a hard wooden chair, so I put a pillow on top, a little extra comfort. If you've got long legs, not an issue for me. It can help to have a chair that you can kind of thread your legs and feet through. Most important for me, I just need a chair that's low enough that allows me to rest my back of the knees on the chair and lower back grounded. Okay, so nice and comfy, legs, feet, calves fully supported, lower back grounded, and sort of it's like I'm being held by the ground. I have support under my head, neck, and shoulders. Some lengthening in the back of my neck. If it's cold, I'll take a blanket and do a full body covering. That also just helps me to feel a little more, held, comforted in the pose. Other thing I can do sometimes with the blanket, which is what I'll do right now, is just place it over my abdomen. That added weight can be very grounding and supportive to the posture. So the pose has a magic of its own, and the pose can be plenty on its own. Sometimes it helps. I've lit a couple of candles. I have some soothing music playing. Sometimes I'll do a little aromatherapy, like lavender, rose, patchouli. Patchouli is also kind of uplifting, so that's been my go-to recently. So once you're in the pose, just take a few moments to settle in. Be sure that you're feeling comfortable and at ease, at least physically, right? Hands could be resting on the belly. Arms can be open by your sides, or even wider if you'd like a little more opening in space across the chest, shoulders, heart center. If it feels comfortable for you to close the eyes, you can close the eyes. Most important, just rest the eyes and soften all the muscles of the face, the forehead, temple, the cheekbones, the jawbone. Once you relax the eyes and soften the muscles in the face, there tends to be this moment of what I call dropping into the pose. There's an energetic shift that begins to occur as I start to transition from a state of fight, flight, or freeze into a more relaxed state of being. With that, you might begin to notice more presence of breath. And it just might be that you have greater awareness of the breath. Allow the fingertips, the toes to relax. Palms of the hands, soles of the feet to soften. Belly soft. The magical part of this pose is this process of dropping in, tuning into the breath, the shift in the nervous system, a quieting of the mind, the mental activity in the mind. Once you begin to tap into that space, you begin to drop in. You might feel this very natural tendency to draw a slightly deeper breath in and even sigh it out. It's just a sign. It's just the body's way of letting you know it's coming home. It's beginning to respond. Beginning to find comfort and ease. It can be challenging to be still, so there is this process of being willing to take the time, allow the space for these transitions to occur. Sometimes the shift occurs right away. Sometimes it might take a little longer. But like with any other yoga posture or movement or exercise, it simply takes practice and patience. Allow the breath to be natural, eventually finding a more restful rhythm to the breath, a more steady rhythm, a more natural flow. You can be in this pose anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, even as long as 20 minutes or more. I can actually fall asleep in this pose, and sometimes I do. I wake up like an hour later. So you can use it as a way to induce sleep, right? And just come into the pose, get nice and sleepy, and crawl into bed. Or you can use it as a way to restore and rejuvenate during the day. In which case, I'll often set an alarm in case, just so that I don't miss an appointment or a class. But when you're ready to come out of the pose, you will know. Oftentimes there's this moment, this feeling of, yeah, it's gonna be okay, right? And that's when you know you've reached sort of the peak of the pose. As you're ready to transition out, you can take a slightly deeper breath in. And either a big breath and exhale or a sigh out of the mouth. You can wiggle fingertips and toes, roll through the ankles and feet. Maybe take a stretch if you need to awaken a little bit more. Ooh, that felt good. Walk the feet back, bringing knees closer to the body. Take a moment, let the lower back settle just a little bit more. And then moving as slowly as you can, keeping the eyes rested or closed. Eventually roll to one side, curl up for at least 1 or 2 rounds of breath. So wanting to transition slowly so there's not a jarring or a shock to the nervous system, right? You want to keep this relaxed state with you for as long as you can. You could find yourself ready for a seated meditation if you have time for that, and that's something that you practice regularly or you want to try. Sometimes I'll sneak in a second favorite restorative pose, just a moment or two in a forward fold, resting forehead on the chair. So what this pose allows me to do is, which is different than just kind of hiding under the covers. So it's allowing for rest, stillness, but it's allowing me to connect, really to connect within, to see what's going on and to be with my internal landscape, my internal world in a way that's just more calm and more restful, right? And then that allows me to show up in my life, in my world, with my family, my friends, with Sammy, my loved ones, in a way that's, where I'm more grounded, I'm more steady, and I'm then able to give more. So that's what I get from this pose. So maybe give it a try. And just add it to your toolbox if it works for you. We'll close with hands at the heart, right? Taking a moment to sort of finish off the pose, bowing head to heart to acknowledge yourself. For taking time to self-care, self-soothe, a moment of gratitude for having the time, the space to do so. Not everyone has the time or the space to take moments of self-care, like literally. And then perhaps setting an intention or sending out a prayer, something that allows you to put a little dose of gratitude, grace, kind of loving, compassionate energy out into the world. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching this video. Perhaps all the way to the end. I do hope you give the pose a try. And if so, let me know how it works for you, and or if you have any questions. Namaste.